Chapter 6. The Council convenes. Reina didn't waste time. Back at the command console, she gathered everything she had. The fracture point, the indentation, the trajectory overlays, the system logs. Piece by piece, she compiled it into a secure report. Clear, precise, undeniable. She sent it directly to her father. He didn't respond. He moved, high alert. Within minutes, the fortress shifted. Orders were issued. Full alert status. Perimeter security doubled. External scans continuous. Relief gave way to vigilance. This was no longer a natural disaster. This was an attack. The council chamber filled quickly. Stone walls, a long table. Leaders of the Snowy Mountain clan took their places. At the head, James, the Alpha. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He looked towards his beta. Begin. Leif stepped forward to present the evidence. Reina stood to his left, Lander at her other side. Leif activated the central display. The images filled the chamber, the fracture, the indentation, the snow displacement. Silence followed. Then Leif spoke. This is not a natural break. He moved the image, using a laser pointer to illustrate the fault line. The stress line should have run deeper. The weight of the snowpack would have forced a full fracture. He highlighted the indentation. This, a tap, is from created force below the fault line. He stepped back slightly, allowing the information to settle, waiting for questions. James's gaze moved over the display, measured, cold. This was triggered. A murmur moved through the council. We need someone up there to gather evidence. Confirm the sabotage, one council member demanded. The plan. James spoke again, clear, decisive. We do not move blindly. He gestured toward the mountain. The slope is unstable. We wait. A commander inclined his head. How long? Until the mountain settles, James said. Several days, if necessary. We need around-the-clock surveillance on the mountain over the next few days. Once it settles, then, we send a team to the point of origin. Leif stepped forward slightly again, adding detail. We'll need full documentation, photographs, soil samples, structural analysis. James nodded once. Set up the plan. Internal investigation. James turned his attention to the command staff. Review all internal security logs for the last week. A technician stepped forward. Yes, Alpha, James continued. Every access point, every system interaction. Reina added, calm but firm. If this was a detonation, it was likely triggered remotely. The room shifted slightly, attention sharpening. No one would risk being on that mountain when it released, a council member stated. Lander's voice followed, which means whoever did this was outside the blast zone. Somewhere with elevation, Beta Leaf added. Someone with no idea of the dome protection. Reina heard her dragon add. The question, contentious debate. Silence settled after the evidence was presented. Heavy, measured. Then, this is exactly what happens. The voice came from one of the elder council members, older than most in the room, older even than James. When we open our gates after 3,000 years of isolation, he continued, we invite others to see what we have built. His gaze moved across the room. What we possess. A murmur of agreement followed. Our prosperity was never meant to be shared, another elder added. Now it has been, and this is the result. Reina's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. A different voice cut in, sharpened, focused. No, all eyes shifted. This was not about Snowy Mountain's wealth. The elder leaned forward slightly. This was about power. His gaze moved directly to Lander. A ripple moved through the room. The union of two of the most powerful bloodlines, he continued, combined with the wealth and influence of both clans. He didn't finish. Another council member took up the thought. This was a strike at the future Alpha King and his mate. It threatens the balance of every dragon kingdom. Another voice followed quickly. We are risking everything for a strategic alliance that is already proving dangerous. And unnecessary, someone added. Isolation protected us for millennia. Perhaps it should have remained that way. The tension in the room thickened. Landa's expression hardened. Reina remained still. She could feel her dragon speaking softly to his, calming, urging patience. They both had faith in her father's ability to cut to the heart of the matter. Leif shifted slightly but did not interrupt. His eyes on his alpha, the voices began to overlap. Opening our systems, inviting outsiders, displaying our strength, this was inevitable. Then, that is enough. Alpha James did not raise his voice. The room fell silent instantly. He stood slowly. The mating between Prince Landa and Princess Reina is not a strategic alliance. His gaze swept the council. It is a union of true mates. The words carried weight, ancient, unquestionable. The most sacred bond our kind recognizes, he continued, one that every dragon reveres, one that many never experience. No one spoke. The Alpha let the silence hold for a moment. Then, and you would reduce it to politics? A few elders shifted uncomfortably, but he wasn't finished. You are all overlooking something far more important. He turned slightly, gesturing toward the display. This attack, a pause, was not impulsive. The room stilled again. It was planned, carefully, precisely. His voice sharpened. This would have taken weeks, probably months to execute. Reina felt it then. The shift. James's gaze moved across the council. The mating was announced days ago. Silence. Understanding began to ripple through the room. There has not been enough time, James continued, to plan an attack of this scale in response to that announcement. One of the dissenting elders straightened slightly, realization dawning. Another looked back at the display, the fracture, the indentation, the precision. James delivered the final blow calmly. This was not an attack on the future Alpha. A beat. It was an attack on Snowy Mountain. The room went still, not from tension, from clarity. Reina watched as the earlier arguments unraveled in silence. The logic was undeniable. This had nothing to do with their union, and everything to do with what Snowy Mountain had built. Their dominance of the cybersecurity market had held steady for decades. Someone had decided they weren't willing to allow that to stand. James's voice lowered, controlled, focused. This is where our investigation begins. His gaze hardened. Who benefits from Snowy Mountain's failure? A pause. And why? We find the truth. Final beat. Reina looked again at the display, the fracture, the scar, the mark left behind. Someone had done this, and they had been precise, but not perfect. We'll find them. Her voice was quiet and certain. She realized that Landa heard her when he squeezed her hand. Chapter 7. At the remote station. The rescue teams worked quickly, clearing the final layers of snow. The dome emerged, intact. Inside, David and Jonathan stood near the entrance as the outer seal opened. Cold air rushed in. Voices followed. Relief. Movement. Vitals check, one of the medics called. Hydration, now. 4 medics rushed forward to the 4 men. David barely glanced at them. I'm fine. You're not, the medic replied. Saline. Her next words were cut off as David and Jonathan ignored her. David's attention shifted. Upward. Jonathan followed his gaze. Two shapes cut through the sky, fast, direct. Recognition hit instantly. "Not now," Jonathan said quietly. The medics paused. David's voice was calm, certain. "We're good." They stepped away from the equipment. Above them, a forest green and a red dragons descended, their mates. Without another word, David, Jonathan shifted almost simultaneously. Two red dragons rose from the snow and met them in the sky. Split. Two flights. They did not return to the fortress. They did not stay. Each pair turned and flew in opposite directions, seeking space, seeking privacy, seeking truth. Patricia and David. They landed on a lower ridge, shielded from the wind, hidden from the others. Patricia shifted first, barely steady as she stepped forward. "Don't," she said quickly, needing to speak before they touched. David stilled. She shook her head, fighting more tears. "I thought..." Her voice broke. "I thought I might lose you." David took a step closer. "You didn't." "I couldn't feel you," she said. "That was the worst part, knowing it was because I hadn't accepted our bond." Silence stretched between them. Then, "I've been afraid," Patricia admitted. David didn't interrupt. "I thought being mated to someone like you, a strong beater, meant I would lose myself." His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened. "My father," she continued, slower now. "I thought he dominated everything, that my mother just gave in." She shook her head. "I was wrong." She would tell him later about her conversation with her mother and what she had witnessed today. A breath. "I didn't see it before." David stepped closer but didn't touch her, still giving her space. "And now?" Patricia met his gaze. "Now I know it is partnership." Her voice steadied. "And I don't want to walk away from that because I was too afraid to understand it." A pause. "I'm done running from this." She moved her hand back and forth between herself and David. David nodded once. "I was never going to force you." "I know," she said softly, and this time she closed the distance, wrapping her arms around his shoulders as she raised her face, open to their mating finally. Her heart feeling whole for the first time in too long. Elise and Jonathan. Elise led Jonathan to a meadow on a narrow cliff that looked out over the human world below. Elise shifted slowly, taking a step back as if she needed space to think. Jonathan didn't move toward her. He waited. "I was never supposed to have this," Elise said quietly. Jonathan tilted his head slightly. "This?" She gestured between them. "A mate." Her voice steadied. "I chose a different path." She looked toward the distant valley. I was going to live among humans, help where I could, places no one else goes. A breath. That doesn't work with two dragons. Jonathan's expression didn't change. No, he said. It doesn't. She looked back at him, surprised. You're not going to argue? He shook his head slightly. I already knew that. A pause. I just didn't know if you'd choose it over me. The honesty landed between them. Elise exhaled slowly. I thought I would. A small, almost disbelieving smile. I was wrong. She stepped closer and felt her dragon purr in satisfaction. I don't want to give this up. Jonathan's voice lowered. Then don't. She held his gaze, knowing that the life she had planned would feel empty without him in it. I won't. Jonathan closed the distance between them, his arms wrapping around her waist as he drew her close. He breathed her in deeply, apricot and fresh pineapple, warm and unmistakably hers. His dragon settled instantly. The tension that had coiled tight within him slowly unfurled, like fog lifting to reveal a clear horizon. For the first time since the avalanche, everything felt certain. Jonathan let out a quiet breath, something close to disbelief. He couldn't believe he felt grateful for a near-death experience, but in that moment, he was. What he didn't yet know was that the danger they had escaped had never been an accident. Chapter 8. Dinner. After the storm. The great dining hall was full again, not with tension, but with life. Laughter echoed across the stone walls. Voices rose, glasses lifted. The avalanche had not broken them. It had reminded them who they were. Reina sat beside Lander, aware of the subtle shift in the room. The eyes of several elders met hers and looked at Lander. But now, with respect, not question. Across the hall, Patricia and David sat closer than before. No hesitation in their movements, no distance between them. Elise and Jonathan spoke quietly, their heads inclined toward one another. Something settled between them, their newly accepted mating glowing around them. At the head of the hall, Alpha James watched it all. He squeezed Alicia's hand, satisfied, his concern for the continued danger hidden. Alicia watched the newly mated couples, pleased with what she was observing. As the dinner hour ended, Alpha James stood. The room quieted instantly. I am pleased with the clan's response to today's emergency. Our preparedness and discipline shined throughout, he said, his voice calm, steady. We survived what could have destroyed us. A pause. But we are not finished. The tone shifted. Heads turned in confusion. There will be a full assembly in 30 minutes. Everyone needs to know what has been discovered. As the clan worked together to clean up the dining hall, there were small snippets of conversation all around as everyone questioned what the alpha meant. What didn't they know? The assembly. The entire clan gathered. The soft rumble of questions filling the room as people took their seats, even those who missed dinner. Alpha James stood before them and all chatter ceased. He was direct as he addressed the people under his care. What we experienced today was not a natural event. A ripple moved through the crowd, gasps of astonishment, shocked looks, he continued. The avalanche was triggered, a deliberate act, planned. Murmurs rose, concern showing on all their faces. The heat of dragonfire rising with the Alpha's announcement. He let the weight of that settle. Then he raised a hand. Silence returned. As a proactive measure, the fortress remains on high alert. All travel in and out of the clan must be approved, and no one is allowed up on the mountain until further notice. Some shifted uneasily. Even after the mountain stabilizes, he continued, until we have neutralized the threat. His gaze swept the room, because the danger did not come from the mountain. A pause. It came from intent. No one questioned him. Now they understood. The study, closed door, late-night meeting, the Alpha's private study. Only a select few met to strategize and craft their response. Alpha James and his beta, Leif. Reina and Lander with their betas, Patricia and David. And finally, Princess Elise and her new mate, Prince Jonathan, and a few members of Reina's staff. At the far end of the room stood the analyst who had spent the entire day reviewing security footage. The room was quiet, focused. Leif stepped forward. "We have uncovered something." He inclined his head toward the analyst. The analyst nodded. "It's from a week ago, but it confirms the sabotage." He activated the display. Footage flickered to life. Grainy, dark, captured at night. He zoomed in slowly, just enough to reveal movement, figures, emerging from a ridge on the far side of the mountain. The side no one watched. "There are no cameras covering that approach," the analyst explained. "They don't appear until they've already crossed onto the mountain facing the fortress." On the screen, the figures moved with precision, almost invisible. White camouflage, no contrast, no color. They looked like shifting snow, perfectly blended into the terrain. Everyone leaned in slightly, watching. The four-man team came to a stop. Then, one knelt, placed something against the ice. The others remained standing, guarding, watching. The analyst froze the frame. Silence filled the room. "They approached from the opposite side of the mountain," the analyst said. "They didn't breach our security." A pause. "They bypassed it." A ripple of tension moved through the room. They would have to rethink everything. James's voice cut through the silence. "Any way to identify them?" The analyst shook his head. "Not through facial recognition. It's too dark. All faces are covered." He hesitated, but based on height, movement patterns, and thermal signatures, "They're human." The word settled heavily. Jonathan leaned forward slightly. "They're well funded." All eyes shifted to him. "That kind of gear isn't cheap," he continued. "Specialized cold-weather camouflage, thermal masking." A pause. "Could be mercenaries." Reina nodded slowly. "Most likely. I don't see any of our direct competitors making that trek themselves," she added. Lander's expression hardened. "They weren't testing your defenses." A beat. "They were trying to cripple you." Silence followed. Then Alpha James spoke. "Then we proceed accordingly." Strategy division. Reina turned to Lander and Jonathan. "You focus on financial movement, acquisitions, sudden capital shifts, over-leveraged positions, anyone preparing to absorb market share." Lander nodded once. "Done." Jonathan added, "We'll trace who benefits financially if Snowy Mountain collapses. Any competitors positioned to gain immediately, we'll find them." Reina turned to her team. "My team and I will track aggressive expansion in the cybersecurity sector. New contracts, underpricing, rapid scaling." She paused, thinking. "Has any organization lost a major contract to us in the past few months?" The room stilled slightly as the implications settled. Her eyes sharpened. "Someone is positioning themselves to dominate the market," she said. This avalanche may be just one move in a much larger strategy. A beat. But dragons don't lose. Her voice lowered, cold, certain. And not to humans. New threat, misinformation. A knock sounded at the door. Leif crossed the room and opened it. "What do you have?" "An anonymous post," the technician said, "about the avalanche." He stepped inside and brought up a new screen. Social media, a space Alpha James had little interest in. But even he could see what mattered: the engagement, the spread. The post was gaining traction rapidly. Snowy Mountain cybersecurity suffers catastrophic loss after avalanche destroys primary data center. Silence filled the room. Then, Reina exhaled slowly. "They're moving fast." Jonathan's voice tightened. "They're trying to control the narrative." Lander's jaw set. "And destabilize your organization publicly." Reina turned immediately. "Public relations," the analyst responded. "Already preparing a statement." Reina nodded. "Include time-stamped images of the fortress, clear, current, and verifiable. People will need visual confirmation." She met his gaze. "I want to review it before it goes out, then we release it immediately." James spoke from across the room. "Do not mention the suspected sabotage." All eyes turned. "We don't tip our hand," he continued, "not until we have confirmation." Reina nodded once. "Agreed." A brief pause, then she added, "And make it clear." Her voice hardened. "We are fully operational." Alpha James watched as the meeting broke, everyone sure in their assignments. He called out to Lander and Jonathan to stay behind. He smiled as he noticed his daughter's automatic response to stay back with their mates. "We need to video call the Alpha King. The anonymous post has increased visibility to our recent crisis. He may have already heard about the avalanche, but not the details. He needs to hear those from us." And somewhere out there, someone believed they had struck a critical blow. They were wrong. Chapter 9. Shifting Gears. The next morning, Reina deliberately pushed the avalanche investigation to the back of her mind. For now. She and Lander would be getting married in 6 months, and both their mothers were already planning. If she didn't make her wishes known early, she would lose all control. Her dragon laughed. "As if you ever had a chance against the Queen. And your mother." Reina sighed. "Traitor." Patricia had already excused herself, something about a security briefing. Reina had smiled and waved her off, but she knew that briefing was as real as a snowstorm in summer. The meeting was held in her mother's lunar suite, with Queen Helena joining by video. It had been going on for nearly an hour. Reina's eyes crossed for what felt like the 5th time. Flowers, guest lists, seating arrangements, color palettes. She was losing this battle badly. "Mother, we don't need all those flowers." Queen Helena didn't even let her finish. "Reina," she said smoothly, "you are not only the future Alpha's mate, you are the future queen of the realm." A pause. "This will be the wedding of the century." Reina blinked. "There will be close to 1,000 guests." 1,000? Reina sat forward. "How did the list get that long? The last count I saw was 400. Her mother answered calmly. "With leaders from the other shifter clans, and your human business partners." Reina leaned back, rubbing her temple. "Maybe we can cut it down." "And who?" Elise asked sweetly, raising a brow. "Would you like to insult?" Reina shot her a look. Elise only smiled wider, clearly enjoying herself. Reina opened her mouth, closed it. She had no answer. With the recent avalanche, and everything it might mean, they couldn't afford to alienate anyone, not allies, not partners. She sighed. "Fine." The discussion moved on. Jewel tones were selected to reflect both clans. emerald and light blue woven with gold. The flowers would remain white, gladiolas, roses, orchids, elegant, excessive, unavoidable. By the time the meeting ended, Reina had agreed to every single one of their suggestions. Her dragon was laughing again, and this time, Reina couldn't even argue. Chapter 10. Financial Conference. Reina looked up at the building as the black car pulled to a stop. The conference hall was nothing like the structures used by cybersecurity firms. Those were typically owned by younger, tech-driven humans, glass and steel, open and modern. Not unlike the fortresses of the dragon clans, this building was different. Stone, dark wood, no glass, no sweeping views, no light flooding in from open skies. This was old money, held, guarded, protected for generations. Heavy crown molding framed the ceiling, where crystal chandeliers cast a warm, controlled glow over the room. Even the air felt contained, reserved. Reina's heels echoed softly against the marble floor. She adjusted the sleeve of her navy jacket, the fabric catching the muted light. Beside her, Lander moved with quiet confidence, his presence cutting through the room without effort. Heads turned, not because of flash, but because power recognized power. They moved through the room, exchanging firm handshakes and measured introductions. Names carried weight here, companies carried history. Nothing was rushed, nothing was casual. They had barely crossed the room when Lander slowed. "There he is," Reina followed his gaze. "Who is that?" Lander exhaled. "Daniel Cross." Cross stood near the center of the room, surrounded but never crowded. He didn't blend in. He anchored the space, and he was already watching them. Of course he was. Cross never missed an opportunity to perform. He broke away from his group and approached. Lander. The greeting was smooth, familiar, not friendly. Cross. No handshake, no wasted motion. Years of competition stood between them. Cross's gaze shifted to Reina, interest sharpened instantly. Lander didn't wait. "This is Reina," he said, voice calm and deliberate, "of Snowy Mountain Global, Cybersecurity." A beat. "My fiancé." The word landed with precision. Reina felt the shift, so did Cross, and instead of stepping back, he leaned in. Lander felt his dragon bristle at the insult. He held it in place with effort. "Reina," Cross said, offering his hand. "Daniel Cross, Cross Meridian Capital." Not an introduction, a statement. Reina accepted his hand, firm, unimpressed. "I'm familiar with your work." His smile flickered, pleased. "I would expect nothing less." Lander remained beside her, still, unmoved. Cross's attention stayed on Reina. "You've set a very high standard for the cybersecurity industry." "Thank you," Reina replied, polite but unaffected. A pause, measured. "You're changing the landscape," he continued, "taking contracts most firms wouldn't even consider." "And succeeding," Reina said. His gaze held hers longer than necessary, deliberate. "Yes." The air shifted, then, "With that level of success," Cross said smoothly, "you'll need strong financial strategy." A slight tilt of his head. "Tax structuring, asset protection, growth positioning." He let the words settle. "You should let me show you what my firm has done for others in your position." A beat. "Dinner tonight?" Reina felt her dragon stir with amusement, not subtle. She tilted her head slightly and slipped her arm around Lander's waist. She felt the tension in him, steady, contained. "I already have an excellent financial advisor." Cross's expression didn't change. "I see." His eyes flicked briefly to Lander, then back to her, a beat. "But you haven't heard what I can offer." Silence. Lander didn't move, but the pressure in the space deepened. Reina felt it, grounding, unshakable. She smiled, polite, final. I don't plan to make any changes. A pause. And I don't entertain distractions. That landed cleanly. Cross studied her, not offended, interested. Another time then. He stepped back, but not before adding, I look forward to seeing how far you go. Reina met his gaze, unflinching. Neither she or Lander replied. Cross turned and disappeared back across the room, smoothly moving to a new group. Silence settled between them. Then, that was deliberate, Lander said. Reina exhaled softly. Yes, a beat. He wasn't flirting. Lander glanced at her. No, Lander didn't elaborate. His enemy had tried to use their relationship to get under his skin. Thank you for listening to Part 2 of Destiny Challenged by Fire by Enchanted Realms. Please like and subscribe and stay tuned for more adventure in Part 3. The fires of the challenge have faded, but destiny still calls. While Patricia and David work behind the scenes to secure both sides of their two worlds, Reina and Lander begin preparing for a future neither of them ever expected. For the first time since the challenge began, they are given something rare. Time together, time to heal, time to dream, and time to discover what it truly means to build a life alongside their fated mate. But even paradise cannot stop destiny from moving forward. Next, Destiny Challenged by Fire, Part 3.